our last one of the day, which is with Burro, or Burro.ai, and they recently, I just saw, Charlie, that you were in the news, selected by Western Growers as one of the top robotics firms to revolutionize innovation on the farm in the Western U.S. So very exciting stuff. And to briefly introduce Charlie and his team, Eric, I thought you'd want to come on and say a couple words.
Yes, pleasure. So I guess we're just about at the home stretch here, but don't be disheartened, Charlie. A lot of people will be watching your presentation, just like they will be with John's on the link later. So I'll go ahead and get started. So I don't think it's very, even though most of us probably don't spend a lot of time on a farm, or have spent a lot of time on a farm, it isn't too difficult to imagine that finding labor and getting labor on a farm is a huge challenge, particularly in these times. And so there isn't, few people that probably know that as well as Charlie himself, because Charlie grew up on a farm and he knows very well about the challenges, as he was telling me yesterday, the challenges of doing tasks in the 110-degree heat is, yeah, you don't find people easily to do that. So after he went to, got his MBA from Harvard, he decided he was working for Case, which is one of the, was, I guess, the largest competitor for John Deere on a number of projects, but then decided to go out and see if he could work on the problem of labor on farms, and came up with and focused on robotics. And so now he has come up, and I think, wasn't it yesterday we were talking, Charlie? We met about 2 or 3 years ago, actually, the first time, and now he has a prototype and moving on to actually beyond prototype and actually producing robots that to work in the farm. And he has a very different model than most of the robotic companies that we have, which I'm sure he'll tell you about, which is that instead of providing a service and bringing a robot to the farm and having a very complicated learning process and maintenance, this is basically a turnkey robot that works collaboratively with teams that basically take it out of the box and plug and play and go at it, right? So Charlie, with that, why don't you take it from there and tell us all about this?
Perfect. Yeah, well, thank you for that that flattering intro. Much appreciated. So can you guys see my screen okay?
Yes.
Awesome. All right. Well, so the problem we're tackling is this labor problem within agriculture. And I think, just the reality is that in 2021, nobody wants to get up at 5 in the morning and go into a field and work from 6 a.m. until dusk in 110-degree heat. And just unpacking that a bit further in some of the really, really labor intensive areas. So think things like table grapes, blueberries, blackberries, raspberries, nursery crops, those types of crops. And those crops, oftentimes north of half of revenue is going to labor, and that number is rising quite quickly. And I think we're all seeing kind of trends in the market space from a technical perspective. And if you follow those trends, it's so clear that robotics and automation is the tool to solve this problem. But most of the stuff that's actually in development requires that farms be rebuilt pretty comprehensively in order to function, and then also need specialist operators on site, and therefore almost have to be sold as a service. And to us, the real world needs real robots right now. And that is exactly what we are selling at scale commercially today. And so what you're seeing on the video here is our launch product. These are robots called Burros. And what these are it's effectively how automation on a farm will actually start. They are collaborative robots working alongside people today, and they're built around computer vision as the dominant component of the sensor stack. And the beauty of computer vision is that it's very, very low cost hardware. So we're basically using cell phone cameras, but because we're using cell phone cameras and because we have cheap hardware, we're able to get a lot of machines out there. And the more these things operate, the more they are learning and becoming more and more capable of doing more things autonomously as well. So by virtue of using computer vision, we've got this approach technically that enables us to scale into many, many different use cases quite rapidly. And so if you think about how autonomy within agriculture is going to begin, in my view, it's going to start with kind of this type of progression. It's going to begin as a robotic Trojan horse, starting collaboratively, helping people work more productively. As it progresses, you're going to ingest an enormous amount of information, start understanding what's taking place at each and every plant, start modularly adding dexterity to start doing things like picking, pruning, weeding, de-leafing, spot spraying, all of those other tasks. And it's going to end with a multi-purpose people scale platform that navigates anywhere, perceives everything, and uses dexterity to manipulate the world. And so with that as framing, none of this matters without an initial compelling, sticky value proposition. And so in table grape vineyards and a couple of other crops where we've had these things running, what we've seen is that a 6-person crew using one of these machines is as productive as an 8-person crew without. And so effectively every unit running is offsetting about 2 full-time employees, and it's working through about a 6 or 7 month harvest cycle. And at the same time, at those economics, you're producing about a 2-month ROI out of the box. And so what this looks like at scale is if you're one of our customers, and as an example, Sunview, which is one of our larger customers, if you're one of those customers, if you have a 30% productivity gain in harvesting, that actually drives about 5 points of additional margin to your bottom line. And so if this grower continues to grow with us, then we will be offsetting about $13 million in annualized labor, by virtue of them adopting the platform at scale. And beyond this, I think we have unpacked or unlocked the central challenge that faces autonomy within agriculture. And that challenge is that most companies try to tackle autonomy comprehensively from A to Z in a particular use case. And so they fall into the trap of tiny TAM. And so if you're building a robot to thin lettuce in Salinas, if you're building a robot to pick strawberries in raised bed systems in the UK, if you're doing an approach like that, what you end up with is a very single purpose device that can do one thing, maybe do it well, but in one niche thing. And you have to buy into the notion that this thing can go out and do a million other things in order to buy in that it's a large TAM. In our case, we've got mobility at a people scale that works indoors and outdoors alongside people. And we've got a near-in bright line view towards uses in table grapes, nursery crops, and a variety of berry crops, most of which are in California. And that opportunity alone is north of $1 billion in labor offset annually within California alone. And at the same time, we've had a huge influx of other companies and other customers in other industries asking to use the mobility that's coming off of this platform. And at the same time, within grapes alone, we can also modularly add dexterity to the point that we're offsetting one-to-one robot to people in the field. And so there's a lot of optionality around market sizing and where we can go with this platform, which we think is quite exciting. And of course, as evidence of that progression being real, last year, I guess we've been working on this product for about 3 years. It took us 6 generations of the product to get it into the marketplace at scale. So last year we had 20 units running in paid commercial use throughout the duration of the season. Right now, or I guess going into the season, we're going to have 90 units running July 1. And as we scale, we're typically seeing 3.5 to 4x growth year over year just with that existing customer base. And we're expecting that to accelerate because the product is getting better and better and better, and we're doing more and more things with it. And so what is core to this approach and what's enabling us to scale quite rapidly is a patent pending autonomy stack built around low-cost computer vision that has been perfected through about 25,000 hours of operation across 7 generations of hardware and over 10,000 autonomous miles of use with about 25 growers. If you wanted to replicate it, you would have to do that same thing and bifurcate the patent that we filed. And what is unique to this approach more specifically is that we have sub-centimeter lighting agnostic and canopy agnostic navigation, meaning that we can localize indoors and outdoors irrespective of a view of the sky. So we're not reliant solely on RTK GPS or high precision GPS. Then separately, we've got AI that gets better and better and better the more these things run, and behaves very safely around people. So we're able to navigate safely amongst crowds in these operating environments. And all of that is packaged into a low-cost piece of hardware and into a autonomy stack that anybody can operate. And so with this, what we have is a way of winning the race to get the most machinery onto the ground and to capture the most data. So the fundamentally unique thing about our approach today is that by virtue of designing our technology in this form, we're able to sell something that an end user can operate and run. So we sell these things in 6-packs typically, and you can have a 6-pack. It's opened up. It's ready to go within a day. And within 15 or 20 minutes of a crew getting exposed to units, you can have 48 people running 6 or 8 of these things in the field quite readily. As we are progressing, we are building this full stack solution that goes outside and is capable of capturing data, navigating, and then increasingly leveraging dexterity as well. And that has been our approach to winning in the marketplace. And separately is this element of how we're actually pricing or selling the product itself. And so some companies I've seen are actually trying to build stuff in-house and then have that device sitting on their balance sheet and are depreciating it as they're selling it as a service. In our case, these things are 100% outsourced, although we do the development. Our manufacturing partners take the working capital hit. We then sell the product to our customers and we pull them into a recurring fee for software and software updates and support. And what that leads us is as we deploy more and more units, we have more and more data coming back to us, and we can deliver more and more higher value autonomy as we expand out the offering. And what this looks like on a customer basis is kind of evidenced here. This is one of our larger customers, a grower called Sun Pacific. They're probably top 5 in the US, about 10,000 acres of grapes, give or take. And you figure like 30 grand an acre in revenue. And their annual labor spend is north of 65 or 70 million a year purely around harvest. They're spending about 310 grand with us this year to save around 740 grand with 22 units running. As we progress, we're intending to increase the SaaS component of our business as we add on more and more capability around the autonomy and have an ever greater deployed fleet. And as we add that capability, we're just basically taking away from the share of wallet that they would otherwise spend on labor and becoming more and more of a SaaS business as we progress. And so what is fundamental to this approach has been partnering with really, really big growers and partnering with industry groups that kind of represent the perspective. And so in 2017 and 2018, we partnered with Western Growers Association and then the California Table Grape Commission as well. And the California Table Grape Commission found us because they were trying to get this product built for the industry. So we're not pushing to them, they are pulling us in. And through that partnership, we refine these things through 2 seasons with them. Last year had 20 units running in paid commercial use, 6 days a week from June until December. And this year we raised pricing by about 26%, and we'll have 70 units going out the door in about 4 or 5 weeks. And so behind this progression is a 14-person team. So with this 14-person team, again, we've refined a product through 7 generations. We'll do at least $1 million in revenue this year with that product. And on the team side, more specifically, I guess I touched on my background a little bit in the introduction. Terry, my co-founder, and Vibor both have backgrounds in computer vision-based autonomy. Terry in particular got his PhD from Oxford, and then spent a couple years with another autonomy startup called Cozy, where he was building grocery store scouting robots using computer vision. So super cool skill set to apply to the space. And then my background, I grew up on a working farm and I started running equipment when I was 4. So I've just been around this space from the time I could walk and talk. It's all I've ever thought about. And while I was with CNH, I was trying to figure out how to get into the space and quit that company to found this one. And so with this team, we've raised about $4 million to date, partnered with some groups, including the California Cable Commission and Western Growers. And we will do at least $1 million in revenue this year. That's all booked already. And on the financial side, like every single macro trend is at our back. And at the same time, this is a business that just favors scale. The more units you have running, the more the cost comes out of them, the more data you have coming back, the better your autonomy becomes, the more you can upsell people into more capability. And so we're targeting north of $100 million in revenue by 2024, growing rapidly as we do that. And to achieve this, we're raising a $9 million Series A. I think half of that will come from existing investors. And that is designed to achieve at least $1 million in revenue this year, all of which is booked already, 7 million plus thereafter, and then kind of scaling rapidly towards what I believe is probably the biggest opportunity within agriculture in the past couple of decades. And so with that, I think, John Deere started with a labor-saving plow. We are starting with a labor-saving autonomous platform and a mission to fully automate this space. And kind of beyond that, I think we're on the precipice of what truly is an explosion of autonomy into this space. And I think people, generally speaking, agree with that thesis, but there's not a lot of certainty around how things start in years 1 through 5. And having spent a ton of time thinking about it, I think that autonomy begins with Burro robots like this. They're not starting as a big IBM mainframe style thing that's installed and it's got white gloved operators from the company. It starts as a collaborative robot built around computer vision, much like early PCs, helping people work more productively, democratizing access to the technology, and expanding into ever more progressively, into ever more use cases as well. And so with that, I think I'm coming up on like 13 or 14 minutes, so apologize for going over. Happy to take any questions and really appreciate the opportunity to chat through it.
Charlie, I have a question for you. Does anybody else have a question?
Go ahead, Eric.
Okay, so no, the question I had, Charlie, was, what can you say? I mean, I'm sure if I'm a farmer, you've gotten I would want to know, and I'm sure you got the question about, tell me a little bit about reliability and who's going to maintain the burros.
Totally. So let me just give you a little context. So for one, these things are all online. Every single second of use is tracked. So when I say reliability, it's not like, oh, you change an oil filter after a couple hours. Like, we track everything in real time all the time. As we do that, the KPI we track is miles, autonomous miles between any sort of intervention. Last year, towards the end of the season, we were coming up on around 10. This year, we're going to head in around 15 to 20.
For our last panel.
And sorry, was there someone's audio? Yes. So we track everything meticulously. On the reliability side, the hardware we have is, I think, at this point, impeccably reliable. The highest hour things have north of 3,800 hours on them, so they've been running, for coming up on almost half a year. And then on the autonomy side, by virtue of how we've designed the platform, the worst thing one of these things can possibly do is kind of bump into you as fast as a shopping cart might hit you in a grocery store. And so the reliability is such that nothing is getting damaged. We're running through thousands of hours of operation without any sort of things breaking. And it's largely a software and autonomy reliability problem at this point that we're tackling as a team. Very little of it is hardware related as well.
Great, thanks.
So I'm just getting a word that we are starting the next session in the main room. So I hate to cut this off short, but Charlie, thank you so much for your presentation. Really appreciate it. And if anyone wants to get a hold of you, I'm guessing there is a fairly easy to remember email address you can give people.
Yep, absolutely. It's charlie@burro.ai. So Charlie like a bartender at burro.ai. And you'll find me there.
Great.
All right.
All right, thanks a lot.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks,
next Charlie.
Session and last one for the day is just beginning.
Perfect. Thank you, everyone.
All right. Bye.